Leah Sharibu was born on May 14, 2003, in Daffy, a small town in Yobe State, northeastern Nigeria. Daffy, though largely dominated by Muslims, was home to a small Christian minority. Leah was born into the Christian home of Nathan and Rebecca Sharibu, a humble and devout family of the Evangelical Church Winning All, ECWA. Her father, Nathan, worked as a civil servant, while her mother, Rebecca, was a devoted homemaker and spiritual mentor to her children. From a tender age, Leah exhibited signs of exceptional moral character and a deep curiosity about God. Raised in an environment where Christian values were both taught and lived, she was often seen attending Sunday school, participating in church services, and singing in the children's choir. Her family's faith was not merely a tradition but a lifestyle anchored on personal devotion, prayer, and studying the Word of God. Early life and education. Leah began her primary school education in Daffy, attending the local government Girls' Science and Technical College, a secondary school which later became the site of her abduction. She was known among her teachers and classmates as brilliant, gentle, and principled. Her classmates would later testify to her love for learning and her kindness to everyone, regardless of religion. She showed a special interest in Christian religious studies and was quick to memorize Bible verses. Her teachers admired her for her discipline and maturity beyond her years. Leah was also a quiet but passionate young girl, one who found comfort in solitude and spiritual reflection. Her salvation experience. Leah's encounter with Christ went beyond family tradition, it was personal and transformational. At around the age of 9, during a youth revival service in her church, she surrendered her life to Jesus Christ. According to testimonies from her family and friends, that moment was marked by visible change in her demeanor. She became more fervent in prayer, active in her church, and bold in sharing her faith with her peers. Despite the strong Islamic presence in her region, Leah was not ashamed to be called a Christian. Her boldness in professing Christ, even as a child, was noted by many around her. In school, she would often be found reading her Bible quietly or offering prayers before meals, something that made her stand out. A godly upbringing. In a part of Nigeria where being a Christian could mean social exclusion or even violence, the Sharibu family made sure Leah and her siblings were deeply rooted in the Christian faith. Morning devotions were a daily routine, and scriptures were taught as essential life principles. Her parents constantly reminded her of the cost of discipleship, preparing her for a world that might not always accept her beliefs. Leah loved reading Bible stories, especially those of young heroes like Daniel, Esther, and Joseph, who stood for God against societal pressure. She often said she wanted to be like them. Little did anyone know she would soon walk that very path of faith under pressure. The abduction, a day that shook Daffy. It was Monday, February 19, 2018, like any other school day at the Government Girls' Science and Technical College, Daffy. Leah and over 100 other girls were busy with their usual academic activities. The dry Harmattan winds swept through the town, and parents had sent their children to school without the slightest idea of what horror would soon unfold. In the late hours of the day, a convoy of heavily armed Boko Haram insurgents stormed the school premises. Their sudden appearance caused immediate chaos. The sounds of gunshots and screaming pierced the air. Teachers fled. Students panicked and scattered, running in different directions. But the terrorists, familiar with such tactics, cornered their targets efficiently. In a matter of minutes, the militants had rounded up 110 girls and forced them into waiting trucks. Leah, just 14 years old at the time, was among them. The journey into captivity began under the shadow of fear, uncertainty, and unimaginable dread. Families in Daffy mourned and wailed as the news spread. The nation was gripped by shock. How could this happen again, just 4 years after the Chibok girls were kidnapped? The government responded, but the scars were already deep. For the Sharibus, this was the beginning of a long, agonizing journey. The choice to refuse denying Jesus. Over the following weeks, intense pressure mounted on the government to act. Behind the scenes, negotiations were initiated between the federal authorities and the terrorists for the release of the girls. Eventually, on March 21, 2018, after 31 days in captivity, 104 of the girls were returned to Daffy in a rare, negotiated release. The girls stumbled out of the trucks into the arms of their tearful parents. But there was one name that echoed in the wind with heartbreaking absence: Leah Sharibu. Why wasn't Leah released? The answer came like a thunderclap: Leah refused to renounce her Christian faith. According to multiple reports and the testimonies of the released girls, Leah had been given multiple opportunities by her captors to gain her freedom. All she had to do was convert to Islam. But Leah, firm in her conviction, said no. The girls recounted how the terrorists pleaded, coaxed, and even threatened her. They told her to repeat the Islamic Sharia and embrace Islam. She was told she could go home if she did. But time and again, Leah stood firm. She told them, "I am a Christian. I will not deny Jesus Christ." Her refusal stunned even her fellow captives. How could a 14-year-old girl possess such unwavering courage in the face of death? Yet that's exactly what she did. While the others were set free, Leah was held back alone, afraid, but not broken. In one of her audio messages that later surfaced, Leah sent a plea to the Nigerian government to rescue her, but not once did she regret her choice to stand for Jesus. Life in captivity. What followed for Leah was a dark and hidden world of suffering. In the custody of some of the most dangerous insurgents in Africa, Leah's faith would be tested in the most brutal ways. There were no schools in the Sambisa forest. No churches. No protection. Leah was surrounded by Islamic radicals who saw her as defiant, rebellious, and a trophy to be subdued. Reports later emerged suggesting that Leah was subjected to intense indoctrination sessions, aimed at breaking her spirit and forcing her to convert. Yet she remained unbending. In captivity, Leah became a symbol of light in the darkest of places. Fellow captives, including Christian women who encountered her in later abductions, testified that Leah often prayed, sang quietly, and encouraged others. Despite the beatings, the hunger, and the isolation, she still held on to the promise of God. She would whisper scriptures to herself. Her captors took away her freedom, but they couldn't take away her faith. In 2020, horrifying reports emerged that Leah had allegedly been forcibly married to a Boko Haram commander, and even bore a child in captivity. These reports remain difficult to independently verify, but they underscore the unthinkable conditions she likely endured. Through all this, the global Christian community rallied behind her, praying, protesting, and demanding justice. But as of this voiceover, Leah is still not free. A living testimony of courage. Leah Sharibu's story is not just about tragedy, it is about triumph through faith. A teenage girl, surrounded by death and hate, chose to hold on to Jesus, knowing full well it could cost her her life. In a time where convenience often drowns conviction, Leah's choice shines like a blazing torch. She is a reminder that true Christianity isn't just about Sunday services, but about living and dying for what you believe in. Leah has been celebrated around the world. Churches have named prayer altars after her. Awards have been given in her honor. But more than that, her story has strengthened the faith of millions. She may still be behind enemy lines, but her spirit is unconquered. And her legacy is already etched into eternity. As the world waits for her return, we must ask ourselves, would we have made the same choice? Would we stand for Christ when our lives are on the line? Leah Sharibu did. Leah's light in a dark world. The story of Leah Sharibu is more than a Nigerian tragedy. It is a global wake-up call. In a world increasingly hostile to truth and righteousness, Leah reminds us of the cost of genuine discipleship. She didn't have a pulpit, a title, or a crowd cheering her on. All she had was her faith, and she held it tighter than life itself. Her decision to remain in chains rather than deny Jesus is a testimony that will echo for generations. While politicians failed her, and the world seems to have moved on, heaven has not forgotten. Her name is written among the saints who did not love their lives unto death. Even now, behind the walls of captivity, Leah Sharibu is still preaching, without a mic, without a stage, but with a message more powerful than 1,000 sermons. Jesus is worth it. A charge to every Christian. As you listen to Leah's story, let it do more than stir your emotions, let it stir your convictions. We live in an age where many are quick to compromise, to blend in, to water down the gospel for comfort, popularity, or convenience. But Leah, a 14-year-old girl, calls us back to the raw, unshakable foundation of our faith. If she could stand for Jesus in the face of AK-47s and brutal extremists, what excuse do we have in our safe cities and quiet churches? If she could sing praises in a forest of terrorists, can't we lift our voices in worship without shame? If she could risk death rather than deny Christ, can't we live boldly for him every single day? Let Leah's story remind us that Christianity is not a hobby, it is a call to die daily. It is a life surrendered, a faith unshakable, and a love for Jesus that no sword or suffering can silence. So wherever you are, stand for Jesus. In your school, in your workplace, in your family, in your generation, stand for Jesus. Not just in word, but in truth. Not just in church, but in life. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because one day, when we stand before the Lord, it won't be our comfort he applauds, it will be our courage. Leah Sharibu chose Christ. Will you?
All I know is that Yeshua must be seen.